Evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Everybody Knows We're Lame. Dare I say an emergency episode? That's right. That's all the KMS network is now, is very important emergencies. And when a 93-year-old dies, we'll do a podcast a week later. So it's me and Clemmer back to discuss another 2 episodes of Cheers. That's right. Ma Clavin died. I don't want to mispronounce her last name. What is it? I don't want to
Frances Sternhagen.
Frances Sternhagen. Okay, good.
No, I didn't know this. She was a very accomplished Broadway actress. She'd won 3 Tonys.
Yeah.
I only know her as old lady in various parts. Misery, Cheers, this Stephen King show called Golden Years. She'd pop up as like the old lady in a bunch of shit. But she was actually an actress that worked for many years. I didn't know.
Yeah, it seemed like the write-ups that were done by her were like focused on the Broadway stuff, and then were like, and if you watch TV, if you're a regular person, you might know her from Cheers, basically. But that does seem like what she was more definitely known for is her Broadway work.
Yeah, and I think she's a very good actress. She's very good in Misery, which is a fantastic movie. But I think she's a very good actress, and she's good here too. Like I think it's an odd part to play, especially the first episode we're going to talk about, because that character is kind of all over the place. Like they try to make her a little bit like Cliff, but they try to give her a little bit of an attitude too, or a little bit like a sharper edge to her than Cliff has. So she has to kind of balance that, and I don't think it's easy to do.
Yeah, and I noticed that, and there was even a difference where they try to make her sometimes like the loving mother to Cliff, but also kind of almost a little like Carla, where she thinks he's an idiot, and that's kind of a tough balancing act, it seemed like. But so Ma Clavin is referenced a lot in the first 5 seasons, but doesn't make her first appearance until season 5, episode 3. And it was funny, actually, this got mentioned on KMS today, something kind of similar to this. That made me think of it is, so she's only 56 in this first episode in season 5,
Yes.
which is crazy to me because we were talking today, and I think I mentioned George Wendt. Like in the early seasons of Cheers, they referenced that Norm Peterson is like 33 or something like that, which you would not think by looking at these characters that a lot of them are that young. And same with Ma Clavin, is you would not think this is a 56-year-old woman.
No, and Cliff is supposed to be, I think he even says it in the first episode, he's 37 years old. Right. And which is bizarre because you think he's like 47. But I will always go back to it. People just looked older back then. I don't really understand why exactly. It wasn't even just how they dressed, like their feet, and maybe it had to do with smoking. I don't know what it is, but people looked so old back then, even in the 80s, than they do now. But so I remember, so I watched Cheers live, like when it was happening, the new episode, especially this like season 10. Yeah. I watched it. I never once did I think for a second, oh, that lady looks too old. Like you never once thought anything differently. It just seemed like how people were. But you watch it now, you're right, Mike. I did a double take when Cliff said he was 37.
That's what's crazy. Actually, Kirk texted you and I the link when she died. Frances Sternhagen, when she died, Kirk texted us the link. And my first thought was, I kind of assumed she'd been dead for years. It didn't dawn on me that this lady was still alive, because you start to think, like, this episode, so we're doing 2 episodes today, season 5, episode 3, and season 10, episode 24, titled Money Dearest and Here's Cliff. Or Here's Cliffy, rather. But yeah, and when you watch this first episode, that's almost 40 years ago, and I would not think that this lady was still kicking.
No, I forgot. So I had an opposite thing where I forgot she was alive, I guess. It's like I hadn't thought about her in a while. I'm like, oh shit, she's still walking the earth. Good for her. Yeah. But I think back to like Back to the Future, when like Marty goes back in time and Strickland is always bald. It's like, did you ever have hair? Like, were you always an old person? That's kind of how I feel about Frances Sternhagen. Like, she's been in my life in theory for 40 years, and she's always been old.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say that I like about Cheers is I always liked that they didn't feel the need to jam the Boston accent in with a lot of characters. Really, the only one of the main group that has Boston accent is Cliff. And I've always thought his was pretty good, which is why I think it's fitting that Ma Clavin kind of is doing a similar accent. Like, I don't think it's the worst Boston accent ever done. I just think it's very cartoonish, but I think that was probably purposeful because it's Cliff's mom.
Yeah, it seemed like she was making more of an effort to be a copy, especially in this first episode, because she was on the show 9 times, I guess.
Yeah.
And this first time we see her, it's more of like a copy of Cliff than a copy of a Boston, like someone from Massachusetts. I feel like she's just trying to mimic what John Ratzenberger is doing more than what people in Boston are doing.
Yeah, well, right away, right out of the gate, they have her do the, a little known fact, that sort of thing. So they're literally trying to make her like, oh, that's where Cliff came from. I get it.
And then they ditch it halfway through the episode. She kind of stops doing that, and then I don't think she really does that. She didn't do any of that in the second episode we see her in much later. But I think
No.
they throw that bit of her away. They try to make her own person, which is smart.
Yeah, you're right. They did ditch that pretty quickly into the. I was thinking, oh, they ditched that with the character in general, but you're right. They ditched that within that one episode, which is
Yeah.
unusual.
I mean, that episode. So, I think the second episode is significantly better than the first.
I
This
agree.
first
I actually
episode,
hated Money Dearest. I thought it was really bad.
it was awful, and
Yeah.
especially for a episode this early in their run, middle of their run, this is terrible. I mean, this is just so hacky sitcom. They fit everything into a half an hour, and nothing works. Like they have this. We meet this billionaire for the first time, and before this show's over, he's dead. So it's just
Yeah.
like it all happens so fast.
Fun fact though, that billionaire, Richard, God damn it, I'm forgetting his name now. Richard Erdman or something like that.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
Leonard in Community, for you Community fans out there, that's how I know him. The whole episode, I was like, I know this fucking guy. And I looked at his
Really?
IMDb. Leonard from Community is how I know him best.
Huh.
Yeah.
He actually, I
Um,
thought he did a nice job. I thought the actor was pretty good. That's another role it's really hard to do. And I thought I kind of believed he was a billionaire.
yeah. So honestly, the only part of the episode I liked is the cold open. I thought that was like kind of funny, but it actually takes away from the rest of the episode because throughout the episode, Cliff becomes like money obsessed. But in the cold
Yes.
open, you see he was just on a vacation to Vancouver, which kind of contradicts that.
Yeah. And also, like, Cliff, his whole thing, he's a postal worker. He cares about his friends or trying to make friends. He cares about the bar. He cares very deeply about being a mailman. He's very proud of that, typically in the show. So for him to be all of a sudden this money, it just seems so out of character.
It was very weird. And so, was Fitzy the character's name, the rich guy?
I
Is that
believe
what they called
so.
him? Yeah. So Fitzy walks into the bar, and he's this rich guy that they all want to kind of kiss his ass and try to get a few bucks from him. And Sam references, he says something to the effect of, like, we're the only family he has,
Right.
which is a bizarre line for a character we don't know at all 5 seasons in.
That he even admits he just met when Cliff went on vacation 2 weeks ago. So they've only known this man for 10 days, basically. And they're like, oh, this guy's the only family he's ever had.
Yeah. So already it's incredibly sloppy. And then even at the beginning, like Cliff is like, "Oh, well, I should set this guy up with Ma so she can marry him and I guess inherit his money when he dies." Which is the other weird thing is the guy seems in fine health. It's not like he was on death's door. I mean, he dies by the end of the episode, but I don't think anyone was predicting that. It was strange that they were all like, "Oh, let's get his money before he croaks."
Yeah, I mean, everything that happens from here is it's just silly and stupid. And like he's gonna give his money to charity because Ma Clavin told him to, which infuriates Cliff. But then he says he's gonna take care of Cliff. Of course, he's a billionaire. If he gave Cliff $1 million, he could still get the rest to charity. Like none of it made any sense. It was all moving very fast and oddly. I don't believe for a second this guy would just marry this woman he met. He's known for 6 days. None of it. It was all very bizarre. It was really lazy writing from a Cheers team that usually does so much better than this.
Yeah, and so my thing with that is like sometimes I get too critical of this stuff where I have to remember like, okay, it's a 1980s sitcom. The writing's not going to be like hold up perfectly under scrutiny. But what always bothers me in like storylines like this, no one says you're going to get married. You met her like 3 hours ago. There should be at least one character that's like, what the hell are you talking about? You're getting married. What does that mean?
Right. And then also, like, so what happens to the guy's money now? Like, he dies. Does he have, like, there was no talk of that. And then people were going to this wake. Who threw the wake if he has no family? What's his industry? All of it they talk how he invented some part that goes into planes, which is good, helpful to know that. But does he own this company? Like, it was all very strange and just haphazard. It was a tough watch. It was a disappointing watch.
Yeah, and Cliff's level of disappointment, like, what am I gonna do now? It's like 3 hours ago before this guy walked into the bar, you weren't thinking of your future. Why are you so devastated now? It didn't make any sense. It was a shit
No,
episode. That's how we're honoring Ma Clavin's death. You walked into a horseshit episode, lady.
right. And it does play into the second episode. So Cliff has always tried to be funny. So you believe that he would send jokes to the Tonight Show. Like I
For sure.
totally buy that.
Yeah.
That works. But Cliff being this money hungry guy doesn't work. So that's why another reason why I think the second episode, which actually is a very good episode, I thought, for a lot of levels.
Yeah, so season 10, episode 24, which probably when it aired was the penultimate episode, right? Because the last two were a two-parter. I'm assuming that aired as an hour.
Yes, penultimate episode of that season. They still had one more year beyond that.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So this is again like it's technically a far-fetched plot line, but definitely much more believable. And like I said, in the sitcom format, you're willing to accept this one a lot more. The idea that they would travel to California and manage to bully their way onto the Tonight Show, essentially. So to give you guys a little background, this one, Cliff is writing jokes for the Tonight Show. He's been sending Carson jokes, and gets another. He's rejected again. And one of the like kind of running gags they have that I do really enjoy is that Lilith is like Cliff's biggest comedy fan. Like she just really enjoys him.
I enjoy that as well. It was a good back and forth, and I like that also that they will call her out on that. Like Frasier would be like, "Why do you think this is funny? This joke sucks," and then she'll explain it in the way only Lilith can, and it works. It all makes sense. But I love that the show will call out the ridiculousness of it, and then have the strength in the character to double back on it, and it works.
And even when he's down on himself and he's like, "That wasn't a joke," and she's like, "Well, it was just your instinctive timing. He can't teach that." Right.
He can't teach that.
But so Norm tries to cheer him up by he intercepts the rejection letter and uses some whiteout to basically fool Norm into thinking that it was an acceptance letter, that they're using his joke. So Norm gets a big ego, wants to fly out to California. Meanwhile, I enjoyed I guess what would be the B plot a little bit more, in the sense that I really liked the Sam and Woody scene when they were on the roof. It was like it had a little bit of the touching part of Cheers to it that I enjoyed.
It's fucking great. You give me a half an hour of Woody Harrelson and Ted Danson, Woody and Sam just on a roof, just shooting the shit. I'd watch that half hour. Like if that was a stunt. Oh, we got locked up here. We can't get down. And they're just talking about the Earth or the world or how they perceive the world. That's great. I loved it.
It really was nice, and it was like the idea that like Woody would take Sam in when he's old is like a legitimate possibility based on how Sam lives his life.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that Sam is giving Woody advice about getting married and how like it didn't work for him, but doesn't mean it can't work. It didn't work for Sam, but it didn't mean it couldn't work for Woody. And then they're talking about the universe and the stars. And I just love hearing the philosophies of different characters that we now have known for 10 years and kind of how they perceive the world. And just the two of them who are, you can tell, are such good friends, and they're just shooting the shit and just enjoy each other's company. I loved it so much.
Yeah. And like I said this in our big Thanksgiving episode a couple weeks ago, but like Woody playing the buffoon, he does it so well for a sitcom, where the lines he delivers, like when Sam asks him if he's getting cold feet, and he says, "I'm a little chilly," but anyways, like I'm trying to be philosophical here. He just moves on. The way he delivers those lines in a different actor's hands could come off very corny, but Woody Harrelson's such a good actor that he delivers those perfectly, and it doesn't kill the flow of what that scene was.
And Ted Danson's so good too. Like Ted Danson's a smart guy in that that roof, but in any other room he's not one of the smartest guys. But he's like, I've read a lot of books, Woody. Like, and he plays it so well and so casually. But that dynamic always works. It's a big reason why the show is so great. Is Woody and Sam behind the bar, and now you get them on the roof all by themselves. I loved it so much. But I liked the A plot too. I thought that, even though they're shoehorning a lot of stuff in, and there's a lot going on, it still made me laugh.
It was a little shoehorned. But again, more believable in a sitcom setting. Like, I liked the idea. Obviously, there's not the cue card guy is not going to accept a bribe from Norm just to screw Carson. But for like a sitcom plot, that's fun, and it made more sense to me than the first episode we were talking about.
I really love the detail in this episode. So little things, like for instance, the joke is about Doc Severance's birthday, and that's how Cliff knows to go on that exact date to the show, because he knows that would be Doc's birthday. So like that kind of stuff, I really like how it's like Norm uses the whiteout, but he says, "Well, I know how to use whiteout because I used to be an accountant." Like they justify all the jokes and everything makes sense, even though it's a ridiculous plot, because they keep justifying. That's what adds that level of believability that you don't get in the first episode.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about with the first episode. It's like, yeah, I get it's a sitcom and it's ridiculous, but you got to give me something that lets me believe all this shit. Now, the reason I assume you chose this episode for a Ma Clavin episode is so that I could ask, hey, Chris, is there anyone with you that might want to tell us how they feel about this episode?
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Oh, well, Johnny Carson's in the episode.
I know, I'm kidding. Yes, Mike. I this is one of my favorite episodes. I really enjoyed it. It was a great time. No, this was really fun to watch. Almost like to see Johnny just even move around and just kind of like act like, you know, you watch clips on like whatever online, whatever, of like quick things of Johnny highlights. But you forget just like how even watching him move around or even seeing Doc's smiling face just brought back a lot of nostalgia for me. And I was shocked. I forgot how much Johnny was in this episode. It wasn't just one line. Like he has a number of lines. He's in two different scenes.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I was surprised he did it in general because Carson doesn't do much. Like,
no.
He did that thing for Gary Shandling. Like after he retired, he popped into Letterman a couple times, but like he really didn't do a lot. And he's a known, you know, he's a fairly cantankerous character. Like, but I think what this proves is he wasn't as much. He wasn't an asshole all the time. Like sometimes the Carson reputation gets so overwhelming that you think like this guy must have been a real prick to deal with all the time. But like on IMDb, it said that Ken Levine, who wrote the episode, was very like went to Carson and said anything you want to change, you can change. And he said he loved the script. He had no problem with it. It took him 2 takes. I guess it took him like 15 minutes to shoot. And they did it after Tonight Show taping. And the audience, I was surprised to read that the audience stayed because they use obviously like canned laughter for the scene, but I guess they did have like the actual audience stay after the Tonight Show taping.
Yeah, they keep panning. I read a blog that Ken Levine wrote about it, which is really interesting. And he right, they do kind of pan back to the audience a lot. But yeah, they sent the script to Johnny, like you said. He had to okay it. He okayed it. He loved it. Interesting though, the audience stayed, Johnny stayed, Doc stayed. Ed McMahon, I guess, did not want to stay, and he left. Now, remember, this is only about, I don't know, this is probably taped like 2 or 3 months before Johnny retired. It aired 2 weeks before he retired. So this really is the end of Johnny's run, which is interesting, too, that he would do this so late in the game. But maybe he always liked Cheers or always kind of appreciated what they did. I don't know. But he was willing to play ball, but Ed McMahon not. Ed McMahon left.
That's very, very surprising because it seems like that'd be right up Ed McMahon's alley, you know?
I would think so too. I was looking for him. I was wondering why he wasn't in. I thought it was strange he wasn't there, but yeah, he's already at work. Just stay an extra half hour. He could be on Cheers.
Yeah.
But
and it would seem to fit like something with like him and Norm or something. They're both, you know, known drunks. That could have been fun. There could have been a lot they could do with Ed McMahon, so that's disappointing. But yeah, I was actually wondering if you knew more about the lining up with the finale or anything, because as it was going on, they have a couple references to Carson leaving, and it's like right before, you know, Carson leaves NBC.
Yeah,
it didn't strike me as something Carson would do to like promote his that didn't seem like something he would do. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe just like Cheers. I don't know. It seemed unusual to me.
It was so unusual, and like I can't stress this enough. Like Carson didn't do this shit. Like he did not pop up on shows, even though they're NBC shows. He just did not do a lot of guest appearances anywhere. I think he wanted to keep the mystique of him, you know, to the nights. You want to see Carson, you watch the Tonight Show, and maybe because it was so close to ending, he kind of let the reins go a little bit. But then again, when he retired, he vanished. Like you didn't see him again. Like you said, you mentioned Gary Shandling, you mentioned Letterman a couple of times. He really went. When he left, he was gone. So maybe this was all kind of part of the plan. I don't know, but it was really interesting, and it made the episode great. And he was really good in it. He worked so well with. Obviously, he's Johnny Carson, but he worked so well with Norm and with Cliff and with Francis Sternhagen, who has quite a bit with him. It's great. I really like this episode. This was a much more enjoyable watch than I had thought going in.
And even so, like the again. Obviously ridiculous, but like the idea that Johnny's calling Ma Clavin over to the couch is kind of a nice symbolic thing. Like the way they did it was very well absurd, sure, but like perfectly done compared to the episode, which was really sloppy.
Yeah. I have zero. It's funny because the last one we did for Thanksgiving, it was the other way around. I'm like, oh, this other Thanksgiving one later in the season, that was season 11. I'm like, this feels tired and hacky. You can tell they wanted to hang it up. Where the season 5 one, whatever we did, was much better. Where this was flipped. I felt the complete opposite about. So maybe it's not so much the show was at the end of its run. Maybe we just saw a bad episode earlier on, and the show was as good as I remembered it throughout.
And you forget that every season has 24, 25 episodes, something like that. So you're gonna get a few duds inevitably. What's crazy is I'm doing an episode about Carl Reiner for Why You Laughing,
right?
And they did 33 episodes a year for that show. It's crazy. I think 33 to 36. He said something like that. That's crazy.
A ton. And think about like the Batman show that used to air twice a week, so they would do like 60 episodes a year, and like no wonder they ran out of gas, and no wonder audiences got kind of bored of it. But yeah, that's why reruns started to become a bigger thing in the 80s and 90s, because at least it gave some of these people a break. And then by then too, you have people like the Friends were getting $1 million an episode. NBC didn't want to shell out $36 million when they could shell out $24 million.
The other tie-in to the Tonight Show, of course, the more famous tie-in probably with Cheers, is obviously that after the finale, once Jay Leno took over for Carson, probably about a year into his tenure, they did the famous drunk episode that was a complete disaster from the Bull and Finch in Boston. So that's the other Tonight Show tie-in, which is probably an episode we should do at some point. We should come back and do maybe the finale and the famous Tonight Show episode or something like that.
That would be great. Is that Tonight Show? Is that on? I had the DVDs. I don't know if are they on there? Are they on
I think
can you watch that?
I think the full thing is on YouTube or so. I've seen it before. I don't know if it's still out there, but I've definitely seen it. So.
I mean, I watched it when it happened. It was bizarre. It was crazy. Yeah. They were all shit faced. And Jay was just trying to like keep control of the room. But that would be a lot of fun, because the finale, if I remember correctly, is quite good. And it's fun to see Diane back, and the Tom Berenger stuff. It's all very good.
Well, last time we were on, I think we said maybe we should do this quarterly or something like that. But the nice thing is, the way that their ages are lined up, if we kind of just play it that every time an obscure character dies, it'll probably bring us back here every 3 months or so. So
even quicker, I would think. I think they're all going to start dropping. I mean, the only one who's died from the new cast is Kirstie Alley, right? I mean, Coach, obviously. But you think about it, though, they've lived, Norm is in his his like mid 70s now.
George Wendt is the most surprising. I can't believe George Wendt is still alive. So we'll be back for his eulogy soon.
I would imagine, although you still see him and stuff, though. He's 75 years old. John Ratzenberger is 76 years old.
Yeah.
And Ted Danson, he's 75. And these guys are none of these guys are young. And Woody was the baby in the
up there.
Oh yeah, Rhea Perlman's got to be. Woody's 62 and he was the baby. Rhea Perlman is 70. Oh, they're all 75. So there might be a thing where they all just go maybe like 6 years from now. Me and you are doing these episodes 3 times a week. I don't know.
With any luck, folks. Any final thoughts on the late great Francis Sternhagen?
I don't think so. I know. I don't remember. I really like this Here's Cliffy episode, but I kind of remember. I don't know if you felt the same way when it was like a Cliff episode, a Cliff centered episode, or a mock Clavin episode. Like watching a syndication as a kid, I always be like, all right, like I'd watch it, but I was never super excited about that. That I wasn't. It was like Gary's Old Town Tavern episode or something else, or a Sam episode I like, or Woody episode I liked a lot more. The Cliff, out of all the main characters, outside of maybe Frasier, I think Cliff might be like my least favorite that I would want to see an episode centered around.
It's interesting. The way you phrase that, I agree with, because I think Cliff might be like my second favorite character after Frasier, but the Cliff-centric episodes would get it was a little too much Cliff, where it's like some like, he has the girl that he's in love with, the other, postal worker.
Yes.
Like you find out he's a 40-year-old virgin that hangs out at a bar all the time. It's like we learn too much about Cliff at times, I think.
Probably, yes. Although you think, though, that's probably accurate who that guy would be. He would be that.
Probably so. That's true.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You're right. So, and that guy Paul, he's kind of like this. This fat
he's always
guy.
around. Yeah,
but he's funny in bursts. Like you wouldn't want to see a Paul centered episode.
Exactly.
But Paul he'll have like 1 or 2 lines in every episode, and they always make me laugh. And like Cliff, 3 or 5 lines an episode, I'm laughing. But like I said, when he's in the episode for like 18 to 22 minutes, it's like, oh, geez, all right. He is obnoxious for a reason. I don't want to be around this guy.
Paul was also one of the 2 Bobs in Office Space, right?
That's right.
The same guy? Yeah.
Yeah.
What a career. We'll be back for a Paul episode soon, I'm sure. All right.
Are you assuming his death is coming shortly? Here?
Yeah, fingers crossed. We'll come back.
So we should say too, Gus, when he was, because we had a Gus update last week with this. This time, I don't know if he's watching it or not, but he was driving on his way to bowling when he was. So I don't know if he's still watching, not watching bowling. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's where Gus.
When I joined, Clemmer was already in the room, and it sounded like the show was launching into space. I didn't know what was happening because Gus was in his car giving us the go ahead. He was turning his key for us.
Wait, he said he thanked us. He said that we were great motivation for bowling or something. I didn't quite understand the thank. I appreciate the thank you, but
I don't know. I don't want to talk about the guy too. If we get too close to him, we'll get canceled next. You know, that's what I fear.
That's true. That's true. That's a good point.
Anything else before we get out of here?
Cheers. What's that?
No. Anything else before we get out of here? That you want
That's all I have.
All right. Go. Any Barstool stuff you're doing to promote? Go watch The Amazing Race, folks.
Yeah, it is called. It's going to be called Rat Race. I can release that here. Exclusive.
That's exciting. Wow, that's very exciting.
That's going to air, I think, in January. We're taping that next week. So I'm excited about that. It's going to air in January. Yeah, watch the bracket. Watch Pick Central if you like betting on sports, like sports bracket's always fun all the time. So just record an episode of that. It should be good. And Mike, what do you got going on? Promote away.
BlindMike.net, folks. Thank you very much. Go to BlindMike.net. Why are you laughing? Blind Mike Project.
I have a question for you about Quincy. Have you ever run into a Cheers cast member on Quincy?
Ooh. Not yet. Certainly not one of the main of the main group. I'm trying to think if there's ever been a side character. No. Not really. The biggest celebrities we've had on Quincy, I would say Jamie Lee Curtis, Casey Kasem, Joanna Kearns was in an episode. I'm going downhill here. I'm trying to think. Mr. Feeney has been in a couple.
Well, William Daniels, he was in The Graduate. He that was probably a big get for them at the time. Because he already had a career.
I think he's in a total of like 4 episodes as 4 different characters. They do that a lot where people come back.
Yeah.
Ed Begley Jr., but
Ed Begley Jr.
Yep.
2 St. Elsewhere people on Quincy.
That's right.
Wow.
And a lot of people that were in 12 Angry Men with Klugman have also appeared in the show. Yeah.
Any Tony Randall sightings? No?
Not yet, and I don't believe there is one, unfortunately. I thought for sure there would be an episode where, like, you know, there's a new hotshot doctor in town, and guess what? It's Tony Randall, you know?
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't think we get anything like that.
I will say Gus just had the most frightening message I've ever seen in a private chat. Okay. He writes, "I've been here the entire time."
He means in our lives, I think. He's always been following us.
I don't know. I'm shaking to my core. That's the last thing you ever want to read. Gus, 6:03 p.m. I've been here the entire time.
What a pro. Well, hopefully this gets up and you guys enjoyed it. Clemmer, good to talk to you, buddy.
Always, Mike. And we'll see who dies next, and we have to do this again.
All right, my friend. We will talk to you guys next time, but until then, sorry, we're closed.